Hello everybody, welcome to Hollywood. Recap. Today I will be explaining you the sci-fi drama movie Artificial Intelligence. Spoilers ahead. It is the 22nd century and the world has fallen apart at its very seams. Climate change has brought about cities to disappear off the face of the earth and resources are spread thin. Governments impose laws limiting how many children people can have in mechas have become the backbone of society. In a meeting at Cybertronics, Professor Allen Hobby shows how robots lack emotional function, but it really is about to change. He needs to make robotic children capable of real love for human beings to fill a void left through the population control measures. His colleagues posed the question of what would make a human love a mecha back, but he does not answer that question because he does not understand the answer. He only has hope. The word that I used to be love. So now 22 months later, Monica and Henry Swinton drive to go to their son Martin in the hospital. He's currently placed in suspended animation after he caught a rare disease. Now the doctor is not hopeful about Martin's odds of survival. He's questioning that Monica's avoiding grief and warns Henry that she can still be reached. Now whilst the Swinton go to their son, Professor Allen is informed that one candidate amongst the many personnel was chosen to take a look at the first mecha child, and that employee is Henry. Henry, your son can also be beyond our science. Now again at their home, Henry walks in and asks Monica to no longer emerge as hysterical. Before introducing David the mecha child, she would not take it well, feeling all ambushed and hurt at Henry for essentially changing Martin. He explained that he is solely making an attempt to make their lives better, and eventually she comes around to the thinking of having another baby in their home. So they're observing as David walks around searching through their family photos. Henry explains that if they choose to hold David, they want to conduct an imprinting protocol which is irreversible. He arms her the paperwork to sign and she determines if this is what she wants. He warns her to solely enact the imprint protocol when she's 100% sure that she wants to preserve them. So they put David a bed and Monica's visibly undecided. She bolts out of the room when David asks her to dress him in his pajamas, and he appears at her through the door as Henry helps him get dressed. Now the following day, Monica actively tries to avoid David. They eat dinner together, however David simply has an empty plate and a glass earlier than him. So now he starts off to imitate what they're doing, and when a piece of spaghetti doesn't go all the way down into Monica's mouth, David laughs at her, scaring her at first before they be a part of in on the laughter. Now it's a way to break the tension. So Monica helps David get ready for bed and tucks him in. She's staring at him, thinking about Martin. The following day she decides to enact the imprint protocol. After reciting the code to him, she thinks she's doing it wrong. When he calls her mommy, she realizes that it worked. He then hugs her, causing Monica to tear up. I located you. So now some time has passed and there's been a full-size shift. Monica begins to love David like he's her own child. But Henry becomes bloodless towards David, and before they depart for a celebration, she gives them a talking teddy bear to hold him company. Now one day Monica receives a frantic call from Henry, who's telling her that Martin's coming back home, and when he is delivered back he's in a wheelchair, nevertheless alternatively ill but apparently on the avenue to recovery. Well, she introduces him to David, and it's clear from his face that he's worried. So Martin and David seem to be getting along simply satisfactory, but David finds himself constantly pressured every time Martin mentions him not being real. So later on, Martin asks his mother to read them a story, but his choice of a story is questionable. He chose Pinocchio. It's becoming clear by the day that Martin has it out for David. Now one day, while eating dinner, Martin creates a competitive eating situation. The trouble is that David cannot consume as he's a robot, something that Teddy attempt to warn him about. You're now not lovable like a doll. Monica and Henry try to quit them both, but it is too late. David's face melts away. Technicians come and fix David up, and later on Martin instructs David to go on a distinct mission that includes him getting a lock of Monica's hair. He tries to reject the mission, but Martin tells him that due to the fact he promised, he has to do it. So in their room, Monica wakes up to scissors in her face. She freaks out and David proceeds to reduce a lock of her hair which falls to the ground where Teddy stands. Henry gets up and violently shakes him, asking him why he did that, and David tells him that all he wanted was once for his mommy to love them more. So whilst getting ready for Martin's birthday party, Monica has forgiven the incident, talking it down to two brothers being Competitive Henry argues that if David was built to love he probably knows how to hate. I wanted mommy to love me that if pushed to these extremes what more would he be capable of? He looks to forget about that this used to be his idea and it's now not lost on her how he sounds. So as the party starts Martin and his friends gang up on David eventually. Martin goes to defend him however now not nearly enough. One kid's curious to be aware of if he has any damage avoidance gadget so he takes David's arm and stabs him. Well he doesn't feel the ache he reacts by going in the back of Martin asking him to keep them protected but Martin's no longer having it. Screaming out for Monica they fall into the pool and David continues conserving on. Even when all the adults jump in and try to get him to let go they pull Martin out leaving David at the backside of the pool. Now finally they retrieve them from the pool and Monica goes over and talks to him about what happened. She stops and sees that he used to be writing some things so she looks at his work and sees the letters he was writing to her telling her how a great deal he loves her and in one or two letters he mentions Henry. Monica becomes barely emotional. She sits down and tells David that they're going to take a power into the use of tomorrow and we all understand what that means. Monica drives whilst David's looking around taking in the trees. He asks her the place they're going and if it's someplace great. Well she doesn't answer those questions. When she tears up he asks if they're happy tears and she still doesn't answer. They pull up into the Cybertronics facility. Monica turns and stops the car. In the forest, David runs out and sets down a blanket. Monica chases after him and tries to explain that she's leaving him there. Well he would not understand that at first. But when he realizes she's never coming back he begs her no longer to leave. She explains to him that this was once their only desire in any other case they will destroy him. He continues begging as she's getting overwhelmed with thoughts and tries to destroy free from his grip. She gets to the vehicle, however he is nevertheless there. She tells him that he wants to run to find another mecha. She additionally tells him to avoid going in the service's direction. He would not recognize why she's leaving him at the back of unable to handle the complex emotions of the state of affairs. Monica runs to the vehicle and drives away. Oh look, do not go that way. All right now. In the town a mecha man through the title of Gigolo Joe is attractive a lady who's nervous about sleeping with a mecha. He tells her to loosen up as once it's over she'll in no way choose a actual man again. After his encounter, he walks the streets to a lodge. The place he receives a room now. The guy at the front desk tells Joe to flash his license now and then as the flesh fair is on the hunt. Inside the room, he finds the girl that he's intended to meet. Murdered husband appears in the back of him admitting to being the killer, kisses her and leaves. Joe realizes that he's in trouble. He quickly escapes that constructing and removes his license. Now as David's taking walks the woodland he tells Teddy he's gonna discover the blue fairy so he can end up a real boy. She can make me into an actual boy. And as he continues taking walks through that forest a truck drops a bunch of mecha parts into a pit while David watches as a group of mecha swarm the junk heap trying to find salvageable parts. Joe runs via the forest simply above where the trash pit is and sees a blinding light. A mecha proclaims rising moon, which is an air balloon owned by the Fleshonists searching for robots. They smash them on stage for entertainment. Upon listening to this the mechas run, consisting of David. So now motorbikes are chasing down the mechas while they target Joe. Specifically, the Flesh Circus captures them all. David drops Teddy and walks to the area of the place they smashed the mechas. He's caught and put in a lost and found. David's looking at on as they smash the mechas and is scared. He's keeping Joe's hand out of fear and Teddy escapes and gets to the cage where they're keeping David. However is grabbed through girl. Now the woman and David appear at one another. She runs to the manipulate room and tells her father that a boy's in the cage. She's wondering he's actual and her father appears at the digital camera and sees a scared David. David asks the mechas why this is happening and they inform him that the humans despise him and get rid of enough of them to hold numerical superiority. Why is this happening? They come and take away a mecha and almost take David to the control room. Operator inspects David and determines he is a mecha. However he's shocked he has never viewed a kid mecha before. He tells David he's one of a kind and he argues with the honest impresario about David's fate, announcing he shouldn't meet the same destiny as the others. Now the impresario would not care and drags David to the death field. David, really afraid, drags Joe along with him and then they set David and Joe up for their death. The impresario preaches about David being made to replace human kids, and when acid falls on David's shoulder he cries out and begs for his lifestyles, which makes the audience surprise if he's truly a mecha. Eventually, they allow David and Joe to escape. So the professor is informed that they've positioned David at a flesh honest. He fears they've achieved their worst to him, but is then knowledgeable that he is safe. So now in the forest David and Joe are traveling a ways away from that flesh veil. And Joe's asking him why he's on the run. To which he says that he is searching for the blue fairy. And when Joe learns that the blue fairy's a female, he tells David he knows all about ladies and can be of help. He tells David if there's one vicinity to go find girls, it is the rogue town. He says it's far and dangerous, so the two travel towards the moon on the way to Rogue City, and Joe convinces a team of teens to take him and David to the city with the promise of women built to please. Now they arrive in the neon haze that is Rogue City, and Joe's guiding him through this town in search of No to find this blue fairy he speaks of. So they meet this physician who's nothing more than a superior version of Google, who seems as a hologram of Einstein. So David's asking questions about the blue fairy, but ultimately asks how the blue fairy can flip him into a real boy. The quote from Professor Allen's book comes up as the answer. To find the blue fairy they're informed to go to the cease of the world where the lions weep. Well, Joe says Mecca by no means again from there, and this is why it's called Manhattan. David insists that they must go to Manhattan. On the way out Joe questions if the blue fairy's even actual. He's afraid of what awaits them, knowing full properly how humans hate mechas. Well, David fights returned, saying that his mommy doesn't hate him, and he tells David people cannot love mecha. Joe affords David a staying rogue with them where it's protected for their sort, but David does not pay attention, so he bids Joe farewell and walks away. Now outdoor Mr. No's crew is there to collect Joe for the homicide of the woman in the hotel. As they load Joe into the police van, David hijacks a plane. Joe ends up escaping and joins him on the airplane, taking the wheel and leading them to Manhattan. Their getaway is much less than smooth. So their approach in Manhattan, which is nothing but a metropolis submerged in water, and they find it constructing with a lion statues and approach the loading bay. When in they stumble on a door with text is written on it. They walk internal and find a boardroom. Blue fairy, a turning chair makes David think Professor Hobby sitting there. However, when the chair turns around he sees another mecha who appears exactly like him. Well, he's stunned and upset, and he tells the other David that he cannot have her, and he step by step receives angrier before destroying his doppelganger in a suit of rage, and Joe again up earlier than completely running away. Professor Hobby runs in and tries to make David experience higher. He tells him he's been waiting for him. David asks if the blue fairy's there because Dr. No said she'd be there, but he tells them they intervened and made Dr. No tell him what he needed to get him to Manhattan. Well, now David's unhappy. However, Alan tells him how lots of a success he is considering. He chased his dream, something they never idea viable from a mecha. He's the first laptop to possess such human qualities. David expresses his disappointment, saying he thought he was once one of a kind. Alan tells him that his son David was one of a type. The mecha David is a first of his kind, but he's not struggling from a loss of identity, feeling no more extraordinary than any old mecha. So Alan tells David he's going to clutch his creators and leaves David alone, or changed you with a younger model. So now David finally stumbles upon many versions of himself. One's boxed and ready to go. There is even a female version known as Darlene. Despondent David sits on the balcony overlooking the flooded town and throws himself into the ocean. Joe's staring at as he falls beneath the surface. Now at the bottom David looks ahead, seeing her. He's pulled out of the ocean by means of Joe. He tells him he saw her earlier than he was pulled out, and then an aircraft collects Joe, but earlier than he's taken away he makes the planes emerge so David can locate his blue fairy. He's traveling deep down and enters an old fairground that has a Pinocchio section. It really is what he meant when he said he saw the blue fairy, and as he is staring at that fairy statue a Ferris wheel falls on him, trapping him. So David makes a want to be a real boy, but nothing happens. For 2,000 years, David stays trapped in the helicopter. The ocean's now frozen over. Aliens are traveling through Manhattan is an area they've now colonized. They stumble upon the aircraft and find David frozen along with Teddy. David wakes up and sees the aliens earlier than him. Then he sees the blue fairy for the first time in 2,000 years. He starts off of coming near her while the Aliens watch on and they speak to one another saying that this robot would have acknowledged actual people. David holds the blue fairy's hand and it falls to pieces so the aliens approach. David with one reviewing his reminiscences of people before they all join in to experience his reminiscences of humans. Now David's taken to the domestic from his memories. He runs around looking for Monica but nobody's home. He comes throughout the blue fairy and asks her to make him an actual boy but she tells him she can't do that. Meanwhile, aliens are watching him from afar. David's questioning why he's in this place that used to be domestic but now feels a bit different. Nicely the blue fairy tells him they prefer him to be joyful, that he's important to him. So David asks if his mommy's coming back soon and the fairy tells him that she can by no means come home, but they can deliver people from his past back. He asks why they cannot carry her back, but he is knowledgeable that because they don't have a physique or any pattern to recreate her from, it's now not viable. Just then Teddy brings David the hair he cut that long time ago. Oh, he saved it and David presents it to the blue fairy and the aliens agree to recreate Monica. Now an alien visits David and explains that if they bring Monica again it'll only be for a day. They observe that the fabric of space-time itself contains individual space-time pathways that cannot be reused, so absolutely everyone brought back cannot stay continually properly. David's arguing that possibly she's different and he tells David that he wishes him to be joyful and David says if that's actual he'll do what he's asking. Well, the solar rises and the aliens tell them that Monica's waking up and he must go to her. David finds her sound asleep in her bed like everything he has been through had never happened. They share an exceptional day. He's feeling loved and happy. Now before Monica falls asleep she tells David she loves him and that she's continually loved him, and the moment he waited for thousands of years had passed off and now David should rest to residing in this moment as an alternative than carrying on my own. All he ever desired used to be his mommy to love him, and he received everything he wanted. Thanks for sticking via. This was once our recap of the movie Artificial Intelligence, launched back in 2001 by Warner Brothers Picture. Thank you for watching.